You've got big projects to tackle, but your day gets swallowed up by repetitive tasks and constant inquiries. It's hard to make progress when you're stuck putting out fires. That's where Element 451's AI assistants come in. Acting like an extra set of hands, you get your time back for the high-impact projects. Ready to reclaim your time? Visit element451.com/AI team to learn more.
Welcome to the Hired Geek Podcast, where each week we explore the impact of EdTech on the student experience with engaging, fun, and relevant conversations that honor the wide range of work happening all across the higher ed ecosystem. I'm your host, Dustin Ramsdell. I've been working in and around higher ed for the past decade focused on student support and digital experiences. Join me every week for discussions with some of the best minds in education technology. The Hired Geek Podcast is a part of the Enrollify podcast network, a robust collection of shows designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Welcome back, everyone, to another wonderful episode of the Hired Geek Podcast. You're in for a treat today because you are going to witness what I feel like is just one of those, conversations you have at a conference, just kind of like brainstorming, ideating, just going with the flow and exploring lots of really cool, interesting stuff about just kind of what's going on, the trend lines impacting higher education and ed tech and everything right now. So my guest, Nicole, we've hung out many times. We recorded an episode on another podcast that I did. Excited to bring you into the higher ed geek world, talk about kind of who you are, what you do, but it also kind of exploring human-centered skills and how they sort of collide and collaborate and sort of intersect with AI, which obviously is a big topic of the day. So we'll start as we always do. Nicole, if you want to introduce yourself to our audience and briefly explain kind of what you do with your current role, which is super interesting. So I want to make sure you have time to share that.
You're giving me a lot to live up to on this one. I hope this is interesting for everybody. Hello, my name is Nicole Baldassarre. I am the Strategic Activator at Beyond Academics. And if you are just rolling your eyes, glazing over, wondering, what is a Strategic Activator? What does it mean? Well, it's actually my top two Clifton strengths combined into a role that was created for me and uniquely me, which is really an honor and a privilege. But I think the more we look at the future of work, the more these human skills that make us innately ourselves are going to be desirable to support organizations solving really complex problems. So Beyond Academics, we are a transformation consulting firm in the higher ed space. We usually get brought in for one of three reasons. It's either people, process, or technology related. On the people side, you might have a new president or CIO that wants to cast their vision and really inject the culture of the organization with the art of the possible, right? Where can we be in 5 years from now as an institution? And so we carry out programs that then translate that vision into reality. Process, how do I have a better student experience? How can I consolidate how many screens people are logging into to get that same level of information? Or my departments are siloed, they need the data to talk to each other. What is the actual process of that information handoff? How do we clean that up and optimize it so that we could have the best outcomes? And then technology. This is what higher ed loves. We love buying stuff and having a million things on our campus that overlap and essentially do the things that other systems that exist do. So we will come in, either a new ERP is selected or you're about to move to a new student information system. We help do a lot of that pre-work so that you're not duplicating things that already exist or having unreasonable expectations about what that new system is going to do. Because it all goes back to the first two I mentioned, the people and the process that then powers the technology. But it's funny because 80% of a budget goes towards the technology, which is really only 20% of the transformation for higher ed. So That's a little bit about Beyond, but if you want, I can talk about my story and how I got to realize I don't fit into a job title and I just need to be myself.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could briefly explain that because you've worked at a variety of, I mean, tech companies broadly and some different ed tech companies. And I know that's
Mhm.
been, folks like yourself, I always appreciate talking to because I think you can look at the whole ecosystem from a variety of like vantage points where some people might be like, okay, I'm all learning design all the time. And that's great. Obviously, you're, very much a subject matter expert in that, whether you're, working at an institution or not. But like, I feel like you've had so many different unique kind of vantage points and everything. So I guess, yeah, if you quickly take us through that journey and how you sort of, certainly like, yeah, I came to be in a place where, you've had this sort of privilege and opportunity to have like a super cool job that is like very much aligned with your strengths.
Yeah, I've been at quite a few different ed tech startups and firms, ranging from CRM to online discussion boards to virtual learning and all of these things. But the main through point for me is kind of creating hybrid roles or pockets within these organizations that truly play to my strengths so that I can have impact and actually execute on things that I think matter. So I come from more of a marketing, sales, brand. I always lumped these things all together. I never really fit into, okay, you're an account executive. Okay, you're a marketing manager. It's like, no, I think all of these things actually need to blend in order to be effective and not be siloed. And so I kind of wanted to leave the traditional sales role because it didn't resonate with me. It's not what drives me. It's the human connections that I made along the way that really gave me that sense of fulfillment. And so when I came to Beyond, I said, hey, I really like your point of view and what you're putting out into the market. I think it's fresh, it's different, it's a little bit of truth serum that maybe people don't want to hear. And that's what always intrigues me is when people stick to their values and aim to educate and inform. So they said they had no job openings. I said, well, I like what you're doing, and I think I could be a real asset, and here's why. And I went into kind of a pitch about my strengths, which then led me to categorize them using Clifton Strengths. It's more of a known system. And strategic activator really means someone who can navigate past complexity and see long term vision by connecting patterns in the near term and short term. And then someone who's not afraid to kind of take that first step into making it happen, right? I'm not scared of getting started. I don't see barriers where other people see red tape. I'm like, no, let's cut through that red tape. And it helps inspire others. So at Beyond, this is a services company and I come from products. It's a little bit different because what we're out here in market doing is leveraging our subject matter experts, and the kinds of projects that we work on are very complex. And so I kind of activate those subject matter experts in conversations that I'm having in market to say, hey, Dustin, you really care about micro credentials and digital wallets. You need to talk to Matt. Oh, you want to know about AI? Well, let me introduce you to Freddie. Like it's great because I can broker these connections in a way that's very authentic and helpful. And if it leads to working together down the way, great. If not, I still feel great about making that connection happen.
Yeah, I mean, and just to like sort of bold and circle and underline like that idea of what you're talking about, that like people, processes, and technology all sort of matter equally. I think just all things being equal, it's like you're saying, like oftentimes the technology and the kind of flashy new tool sucks a lot of the air
Yes.
out of the room, and you're sort of overlooking about the sort of implementation, the change management, and kind of coalition building, and it's just really exciting. I think just seeing uh what you're doing feels very refreshing, and that also just kind of in the scope of like our conversation here, that like
Mhm.
you are a person that again is just like easy to talk to about this stuff because you have such a very kind of just voracious energy and a passion and a curiosity and all that. Like I know you're doing like a lot of content with Beyond and everything, which I just always love to see people kind of making space for that, because I think it yeah, it's helpful for where we are, because there's I think so many paradigm shifts that are sort of happening simultaneously, where we kind of moved past that sort of like peak tech company where it was just all about the sort of flashy
Oh,
presentations and sort of the
God.
sizzle. Now we're trying to like, all right, let's get down to the steak. Let's like
Let's
really
cut
look at the
through the
substance.
fluff. Okay. We all
Right.
know marketing fluff. We all know demos that glitter as gold. And then you get the product and you're like, what the heck happened? This doesn't do what I thought it does. And that's because folks lead with that vendor first mindset. Oh, they're telling me they're the expert on their product, but we're lacking those sort of, I don't want to say critical thinking skills, but maybe those sense making skills of what is my target here? Am I just getting distracted away from my actual goal and target by this thing that says it can get me there? How does it get me there? How does it fit in to the system of systems architecture that we use at our institutions today? Is it just another fancy point solution, or is it something that is more workflow driven and going to be integrated into my day to day instead of another tab that I have to have open, or another system that I have to log into? I don't think that's the future. And if we want to kind of tiptoe our way into the AI conversation, because it's very much the new shiny toy, right, in a lot of ways, and there's actually some merit to that, because it is bringing a broader awareness to the fact that there are things we can now do that will make our lives a lot easier. But AI is actually not new, right? It's been around for 20, 30 plus years. It's just the advent of generative AI and open AI making this accessible, or more accessible to folks with, just an internet connection or on their phone using an app. So it's always been around. It's just a matter of now it's more popular. And because it's in the hands of students and end users, schools don't know what the heck to do. And I don't blame them, right? Like, this is the wild, wild west when it comes to the model that education was built on. And unfortunately, that model is broken, right? Like, just churn and learn. What I used to do, I would just memorize a bunch of stuff before a test and cram it all in and then spit it all out and not actually learn anything. Could I tell you about the chemistry classes I took? No, but I could tell you I hated them. Like, I remember the feeling of being in a chemistry class. Like, Dustin, what was your least favorite subject or course when you were in undergrad?
Definitely a lot of the science ones, because I think it
Yes,
was that
you
idea
and
that
me
like,
are
yeah,
right.
yeah,
Science.
like math or, any of those kind of things where it's like, yeah, you could memorize a formula, memorize a definition. And it is that idea that like, okay, you're taking the idea of like how a search engine like Google
Right.
redefined the way that people sort of interface with information. You're basically like moving now. And I think there'll be far more repercussions long term, but I feel like the most immediate thing is that like, what if you could like just, you know, put a bunch of steroids into Google basically and be like kind of interfacing with it versus like, oh, I have to try to filter through like the
Right.
information that it's surfacing for me
Right.
and make sense of it or whatever. Like, it's at least kind of giving you a narrative version. And I've even seen now where like there's tools where you can upload your own information. I think Google has this, I forget exactly what it's called, but like, okay, I could take a bunch of like PDFs of like research articles or something, upload it all in, and it'll create a podcast episode.
I'm so glad you hit on this, because we were talking about this at Beyond the other day. We took one of our white papers and put it in its Notebook LLM. We put it in Notebook LLM, and it literally created a male and female, like what we're doing right now, podcast where they go back and forth. It sounds kind of like NPR. It was pretty professional yet organic in a way. They're laughing, they're saying they're drawing inferences out of just uploading a random PDF. And it's kind of scary, because I know we joked about this before we went on air, that people can't see us in this podcast, and that I was like, oh, okay, I can mess up my hair, it doesn't matter. But with the things like Notebook LLM, it's like, are people going to actually think this is a real podcast? Like, authenticity is on theater right now. Like, it's authenticity theater. People said transformation theater. Now it's authenticity theater. Is it real or not? So there's so much to unpack here. But I think if I stay in my opportunist, positive mindset, because we could go doomsday real quick. And I don't think plagiarism and cheating is the right way of looking at the opportunities afforded to us by AI. But if we look at it in terms of humans and fulfillment, right? You talked about you didn't like science. It gave you a negative experience. You can go learn anything you want about a scientific theory or method without actually having to sit and learn it, right? You can make it digestible and customized to the way you like to consume information. So if you put it into a podcast that adds jokes and contextualizes it on a 10th grade level, you might actually draw more inferences from that topic. So there's a lot there, but I think for me and what I'm looking at is AI handling more of that fast work, that productivity coming from sales. Sometimes I'm like a shelter dog because I have this PTSD of numbers and metrics, and you have to send this many emails and have this many cold calls. First of all, that just goes against my values and philosophy. So I never did it. So I always got in trouble because I didn't hit those arbitrary activity metrics, but that's because to me, they didn't have meaning. What had meaning was the moment of connection, really qualifying, does this person need my services? And then moving them through in a consultative way. And I think if AI takes that data, routine, activity type work off the front lines, humans get to do the slow work, which is what I've always been drawn to. It's more of that nuanced, problem solving, it involves emotional intelligence, leadership qualities. Like AI will help us get back to that slow work, which has been a huge gap. Like think about burnout. There's all these statistics about burnout. I think it's something like 37% of student affairs professionals are experiencing burnout and want to leave student affairs entirely, not just go to another institution, but leave the industry entirely. Like, that's not good. These are our frontline student facing folks who are expected to do way more with way less. And if we don't use the opportunity of AI to augment their capabilities, they're going to leave, right? Like it's not sustainable. So that's kind of areas I've been really interested in workflows and journeys, and how can we make humans better humans, happier humans, by leveraging this technology for good.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely where I get excited about this is that like the idea of you've seen like you're saying like kind of AI filter into a lot of different things in light where like you could very manually set up a sort of like if this then that logic, like there's like been apps like that that have been around for a long time, and the idea
Sure.
that like
Yeah.
building more of that in by default to more platforms and products. And obviously like the idea of like something I love is like Grammarly and how it sort of like is really trying to like help with like voice and tone and all that, and like that just becomes more ubiquitous because obviously we're communicating in a variety of platforms all the time. Like it's not just sort of like, well, you have to use our special thing over here, like you're saying, like to be able to make sure you have consistent voice. Hey folks, Dustin here. Element 451 is hosting the AI Engage Summit on October 29th and 30th. This free virtual event features many of your favorite Enrollify creators and will explore AI's impact on student engagement, enrollment marketing, and institutional success. Learn how to tap into the power of AI to turn data into actionable insights, utilize predictive analytics, and monitor and support student performance. Plus, hear directly from current students on how AI is influencing their engagement in campus life. The AI Engage Summit is your guide to understanding and applying AI at your school. Registration is free. Just visit element451.com to save your spot. Now, back to the show.
Think about how much easier it is now with generative AI to plug in a PDF of a course catalog and then search that course catalog with a question, say, I need to graduate on time in this program, in this major. What classes do I need to take this semester in order to help get me there? It gives you answers. It will crawl that course catalog. It will look at the degree requirements and you will get an answer. Of course, there needs to be a human validation layer. And I think that's where the role of advising is going to shift away from doing all that manual, administrative, upfront work to leveraging the capabilities of Gen AI to then validate that structured work instead, and then give them that rest of their free time to really build those human connections with their students. Because at the end of the day, I don't remember how fast I got my schedule from an advisor, but I remember, just like you remember how science made you feel learning it, I remember how my advisor made me feel when I went in. If they weren't, the best advisor because they didn't invest in me and what I was interested in or help me go beyond just the transactional and transform in my education, I remember that. If they did the opposite and they actually spent more time getting to know me versus like churn and burn of, okay, check the box, get you out onto the next. My caseload is 250 students that I have to see this week. These are the moments that matter in education.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you're a Brandon Bustede follower, but I like his stuff. And he had one post recently that I thought was just so interesting, talking about the magic of college and basically the two factors or categories where that true magic came alive was relationship rich and work integrated. So he was saying how something like 2 out of 100 students ultimately experience that magic of college. And it's something about graduates' odds of being engaged in their work, thriving in their well-being in their lifetime. The magic of college contributes to that. And so those two categories of relationship rich, work integrated raise statements like, I had one professor who made me excited about learning. My professors or student support staff cared about me as a person. I worked on a project that took me a semester or longer to complete. I had an internship. These kinds of statements where if you could say yes, 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 you likely feel fulfilled in your career and where you're at now because of that magical college experience you got. It's not because of all the transactional things and the check in the box. It's the relationship rich and integrated things. So, yeah, I could go on all day.
Yeah, no, and again, like your passion and interest and knowledge in this is, I think, very tangible and visceral, and I
You
appreciate it.
can't
And I
see
think,
it, but I am
uh,
real and my hands are being raised.
well, and I think like that's to the point of like I'm hoping, yeah, to like move this show to be like more video centered because I think that
Mhm.
is the idea. It's like you can kind of move beyond like, okay, well nowadays you can like replicate, audio through like AI
You
and
can
everything, but it's like,
replicate video
you know,
too, so that's what's
well,
scary.
yeah,
It's like, do
um,
we have to go back to in person? Which, if we want to touch on this, like, let's go for it. Amazon calling all of its employees back 5 days a week to be in office starting next year. This is going to create a movement. And if you think about, again, we're all burnt out, return to office, hybrid work. What does this mean for the future of work? What does this mean for autonomy and agency within your job? These are a lot of questions. It's not about having all the right answer, but we should be asking these kind of thought provoking questions to see where leaders lie on these issues and is it backed with data. My friend was like, oh, Google wants us to go back into the office, they say we're more productive. Where are the numbers on that? We have the
mhm,
technology to know if you're being more productive or not. It exists, all that architecture is there. They're not using it. It's still anecdotal gut assumptions for the most part because they're not showing their employees this research and this data. So again, this can go back to human skills. We can go all the way back
yeah,
to the
yeah,
beginning of our conversation, like transparency, trustworthiness, communication. If you follow Todd McLeese, he's another person I really like on this. He's talking about human skills for the AI economy. It's things like growth mindset. Do you know how hard it is to find growth mindset in higher education in the way it's always been done? And why try something new? We're risk adverse, like this has worked. Why change it? These are the important things that folks need to understand and know are going to position them for the future of work. Whether it's the future of your institution, making it the next 5 years. You don't want to be part of the statistics where a school closes every week. It's a shame. It's so sad, but it can be avoided, right? We just have to be more strategic and focus maybe a little bit less on the technology, maybe a little bit more on the people and process in order to create this symbiotic, ecosystem.
mhm. Yeah, that's what I kind of wanted to make sure because I felt like we were kind of dancing around a little bit. Is that idea of like human centered skills and making
Yeah.
them so important to cultivate now? And
What
I think,
are they?
yeah, so I guess just to make sure that you can kind of capture that essence a bit, like in
Mhm.
your mind, like, I think you listed off a few sort of attributes, but I think it is the idea that like human centered skills are what I think with that magic of higher ed for students is like what's being kind of cultivated and nurtured, and even the idea of like it just generally like being more human centered as organizations. And I think the human centered skills would be how leaders
Yes.
and things would be sort of embodying and being emblematic of like, okay, we care about uh, I guess for institutions, like we care about cultivating this in our students. We are showing up and sort of implementing them in our day to day and how we work together as
Mhm.
faculty and staff and everything. So all that to say, if you could quickly just define from your point of view what those human centered skills are, and then just really kind of emphasizing again, like what makes them so important to cultivate right now.
Yeah, I think it's going to be scary to say this, but I do think this definition will change in the next 10 years because I can't predict the future and I have no idea where this AI economy is going to lead us. We've seen the intelligence age come from Sam Altman's sort of open letter of this is what's possible. And we can link to these things in the show notes. But for me, what it boils down to, and the reason I know this is because I had to apply to be part of the human intelligence movement. And they literally asked, what do you think human skills are and what do they mean to you? And for me, it's anything that makes you uniquely human. Like for me, is it uniquely human that I can cook? No, it's not uniquely human that I can cook. But is it uniquely human that I need a little sweet treat anytime I eat something salty? Like maybe that's what makes me uniquely human. That is Nicole Baldassarre right there. So if we contextualize this and actually name a few uniquely human skills, we can talk about things like creativity, emotional intelligence, innovation, things like visionary thinking. How can we look to the future and cast a vision? Can AI do these things? Sure. But is it way more impactful and does it unlock human potential when we instill them within ourselves? Absolutely. Because I see more of the human empowered skills like human X AI competencies in the quadrant of ethical discernment. These are human skills we're going to need, but it's in the context of working with machines, right? An explorer mindset, being able to tinker and play and see what works for me, what doesn't. AI agility, those are kind of human X machine. But then the true human to human connection, these are things like storytelling, right? Teamwork, having a collaborative mindset. So it might be seen as this big mystical, what are human skills? What makes us human? But the way that, and I'll credit Todd McLeese again, the way that he breaks this down on an axis is what unlocks human potential? What is the special sauce of human to human relationships and connection? And then where can we thrive being augmented by AI, machines, et cetera, technology? And so breaking the skills down that way to really hone in on what's going to make the future work whistle.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think we're going through such a moment of like obviously a lot of paradigm shifts and everything just kind of being, shaken up in terms of and I guess even like, as I combine metaphors here, I guess like the pendulum is swinging from like where we thought like everything online, everything digital, we're all separated, isolated, and whatever else,
Yes.
to where things are kind of swinging back the other way, where I think we're making that acknowledgement of like human centered skills are going to be such a sort of durable thing to cultivate for
Yeah.
any of us, because it's like, yeah, like certain things, it's going to just be pretty inherent and kind of emblematic of kind of the human experience, no matter what comes on the
Well,
horizon. But like it's
let's
just, yeah.
let's dig in right there. So another practical example, if a person has emotional intelligence or not, right? Like right now we see all over social media narcissism, gaslighting, all of these demonized terms and it's like sure, there's a spectrum for all of this, but isn't it more important now than ever as we're highlighting all of these flaws and things in society to have that emotional intelligence, ethical discernment to really understand in context who am I up against here? You know what I mean? And then if we relate this to, I know we're going to EDUCAUSE and Brene Brown is the keynote speaker, thinking about, she came out with a book called Atlas of the Heart. It's literally going into emotions and being able to talk about your emotions in a way that is productive in your organization. Like, we shouldn't shy away from these uniquely human emotions. We just have to have the EQ to be able to cast a lens to look through when you're navigating workplace complexity or transitions or any conflict that comes up in the workplace. So I'm super pumped for EDUCAUSE because I'm a big Brene Brown fan, and I think it all goes back to what we're saying: human skills in this AI economy. Like, let's focus on vulnerability. Let's have real conversations. Let's be raw about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because what I was thinking is that like AI, like we're building it, we're making it, and we can set parameters around certain things, I guess. And the idea of like,
Yeah.
because it could be like, okay, well, obviously like putting tags on things where it's like, all right, I generated this video, this, audio, this picture, whatever with AI. And I think that's just like a smart move. And I think we're making steps in the right direction there. We're not like, all the way there yet. But even just if there's like certain professions or different things that we do want to set like parameters around, like I think it's just we lagged so much
Oh, yeah.
around, I think, like digital literacy and expectations around like social media platforms, and it feels like
Well, it's moving faster than we could have
right.
ever. Like, we are not evolutionary wired for this speed of change that we are experiencing. Like, evolutionary biologists are talking about it. And the more we can get back to our ancestral roots, gathering as a community, having rituals, all of these things, that is what grounds us in this super fast, high cortisol, high stress paced world that we live in. And to your point before of what you're saying, like, oh, humans are building the AI and, we have some control. It's actually snowballing. It's not really in our control anymore now that we've kind of opened the gates. Like, GPT-1 was created all on the premise that it's going to predict the next word. That was literally the premise of GPT-1. Nobody knew how sophisticated it would become, where now you could say, what should I have for lunch? And based on other things I've put on it, it'll tell me I should make what's in my fridge, how I can combine ingredients, the level of skill I have in cooking, and how fast I need to get things done before my next meeting. It does that all with one question prompt, not just guessing the next word anymore, right? And so, in the same vein, in our conversation today, I would love to draw the parallel. Like, we didn't know what AI and GPT would become when we first started. I don't think organizations know how to unlock and empower humans to reach their full potential. And once we figure that out, whether it's through the augmentation of these intelligent machines or cultivating the human skills needed to thrive in this economy and within your teams, collective intelligence, those kinds of things, I almost look at it as like better prompting or better coaching and better leadership, right? If we are getting better at prompting machines to do what we want, how come we're not investing in better coaching for our teams? We know how effective mentorship is. There's a billion studies on it in higher ed alone. When are we going to start to focus and swing that pendulum back onto the people?
The takeaway for me is that idea that like obviously like human-centered skills are going to be just continually more and more important as time goes on, and you can see that strategic activation of AI.
I hope you feel activated by this.
Can help facilitate more human-centered skill. The idea of like
Right.
recognizing that like I need to make myself available as like the leader of this institution to students who want to hear my perspective on things or whatever. Like the idea that you could I don't know, just like better sort of facilitate, because I think kind of what you're getting at with like the advisor example, the idea that like somebody could build a schedule and validate it with an advisor, but that advisor making themselves easily sort of accessible and available for like the higher level conversations about like, well, what is it that you want to do with your life? Like, what are the things that you enjoy? Like those kind of conversations versus it being,
Yeah, you have kids at home. Did you know we have childcare on campus? Like, those questions that easily get overlooked because of the mundane need to happen right now, immediate transaction that takes priority.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. And like the idea that like with us building different tools and whatever, like what we're sort of feeding into an AI powered chat bot that's going to support students, whatever, like just being much more like empathetic to like, yeah, those sort of things of like, okay, there's a lot of things going on in people's lives. We need to make sure that we're, making sure that they're readily able to access resources and,
That they feel seen and heard. Let's
right.
just boil it down. Let's keep it simple. People want to feel seen and heard in every interaction. And if your institution is not prioritizing that and its student experience, you're going to be left behind. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, the idea of like, there's a lot of room and opportunity for creative thinking and innovation
Mhm,
in this space right now. Like, this is like a
mhm.
very dynamic tool. Just thinking, yeah, again, how you're kind of bringing the people and processes and technology together to, keep the North Star very clear of like, how does this benefit students and how can we, create more uh, support, engagement, fulfillment, and, nurture more human-centered skills. So I think that is a great place to end it. I know you made mention really quickly if you want to kind of give a shout out to Educause coming out very soon. It's coming out very soon when this episode comes out. That I know. That's going to be, I think, a very interesting event, like you're saying, that's going to be kind
Yeah.
of pulling together a lot of these threads. So I don't know, like things that you're excited about. I mean, you mentioned obviously Brene Brown is obviously going to be a
Oh
huge
my
pull, I
God.
think, for a lot of people. But
Fangirling.
yeah, other stuff, I guess, that you're sort of looking forward to with that event in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I love EDUCAUSE because it brings together some of my favorite colleagues and people I've collected throughout my professional career. So it's just great to have that in-person time together. But I'm really interested in. I know they have a future of work track now, which might be newer. So I'll definitely be investigating that. But if you're at EDUCAUSE, come say hello to me and Nicole. I'll be at the Beyond Academics booth and. Yeah, I'm just happy to be in person, be in San Antonio, eat some barbecue, wear some cowboy boots, and enjoy the experience altogether.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, good to know that you and your folks will have a booth there and folks can keep the conversation going and all that. It's always like
Yeah,
my hope is that folks kind of, follow up and like connect on LinkedIn or, do the
yeah,
other
I
things
don't
that kind of,
bite. Like I
yeah.
love just connecting with people and talking. And if there's any way I can help others reach their potential, or if they need a soundboard on an idea that hasn't been heard within their team, they don't feel safe to bring it up. Like I would love to be that person that is your cheerleader and helps you because that's what fulfills me.
The Hired Geek Podcast is a part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances you'll like all the other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing constantly, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks all designed to empower you to be a better hired professional. Our shows help you find your next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your host. Learn from people like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Dave Kibbolds, and Eddie Francis, as well as so many other of your favorite leaders in higher education. Enrollify is made possible by the support of Element 451, a leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.